Have you noticed that guilt doesn't show up before you change? It shows up after. After the decision feels clear, after your body relaxes, after you stop explaining. And this is where a lot of women start doubting themselves again. That's what we're talking about today. I'm Sandy Bartlett, a self discovery coach for women who are done living from people pleasing patterns and ready to reclaim their voice, worth, and inner authority. And this is Journey to Self Power Beyond People Pleasing. If you listened to last week's episode about how being tired can actually mean transition, today's conversation is the next step. Because once a woman realizes she's done carrying an old role, guilt almost always follows. Before we go further, pause for a second and answer this for yourself. Where have you felt clear and then guilty anyway? If you're listening at a platform where you can comment, drop a single word that describes that situation. One word is all you need. So before we get into the meat of this, I want to share the card that came forward for this episode. I pulled family, friends, and guides from the spirit suit in my quantum oracle deck. And what's important about this card is what it doesn't say. It doesn't say approval. It doesn't say agreement. It doesn't say everyone will understand your choice. This card speaks to support that exists even when you feel misunderstood. When guilt shows up after clarity, it often convinces you that you're alone, that you disappointed someone, lost connection, or stepped away from belonging. This card is a reminder that support isn't always loud or obvious. Some of it is ancestral, energetic, unseen, or quietly present in the people who respect you without needing explanations. Family, friends, and guides appears when you're being held, even if the old dynamics are shifting, especially when you stop overgiving. This is spirit saying, you are not abandoning connection. You are changing the terms of it. And you are not doing that alone. Let that land for a bit. I want to share something personal, not from my career, but from my life. There was a period where I stopped explaining myself to people who were used to having access to my time, energy, and emotional labor. No big announcement, no confrontation. I just stopped overgiving. What surprised me wasn't their reaction. It was the guilt that showed up inside of me. Even though the decision felt right in my body, I caught myself wanting to justify, to soften the edges, to make sure no one felt uncomfortable because of my choice. Thing had gone wrong, but I had stepped out of a role I'd played for a very long time, the one who made things easier for everyone else. And guilt didn't show up because I'd done something wrong. It showed up because that version of me was no longer in charge. As you're listening, I want you to do this. Finish this sentence either out loud or in writing. I feel guilty when I stop, and then fill in the blank. And if you're able, share your answer in the comments. You don't need to explain it. These are exactly the moments we explore inside my community. Not to talk yourself out of guilt, not to rush past it, but to understand what role you just stepped out of. and whether you actually want to step back into it. If this episode is hitting close to home, you'll find the link to the community in the show notes. Here's what most women don't realize. Guilt doesn't show up when you're out of alignment. It shows up when you're leaving an old alignment, an old agreement, an old expectation, an old version of you that kept the peace. That's why guilt often gets louder after clarity. It's not a warning sign, it's a reaction. For people pleasers, guilt has been the leash for a very long time. So when you stop explaining, stop smoothing, stop carrying what isn't yours, guilt panics. Not because you're wrong, but because something old is losing control. If guilt tends to show up for you after you say no, step back, or choose yourself, tap pause for a moment and take one long, slow breath. Then quietly say to yourself, I'm allowed to let this feel uncomfortable. Now, grab a pen or open a note and write this question down. What version of me feels uncomfortable letting go right now? Write for 2 minutes, then stop. No fixing, no editing. I think you'll be surprised at what comes up. For our whispers of wisdom, Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Guilt often feels like fate until you recognize it as conditioning. For your empowerment action this week, don't ask, how do I stop feeling guilty? Instead, ask, what did I just stop doing and who benefited from that? Write the answer once, then leave it alone. Guilt doesn't mean you're moving backward. It doesn't mean you made the wrong choice. Often it means an old version of you is being asked to step aside. Next time, we're going to talk about why calm boundaries can feel more uncomfortable than explosive ones, and why that discomfort is often a sign of real integration. Until next time, be true to you.